St. Mary's General Hospital, a symbol of medical excellence in a prosperous suburban area, was on the verge of encountering an unforeseen challenge when Anna Parker, a skilled black nurse, became part of their team. Anna Parker had no idea of the deep-rooted prejudices she was about to face. As tensions simmered and conflicts began to rise, an unassuming patient named Thomas Müller quietly observed from his hospital bed. Yet Mr. Müller was no ordinary patient, and his presence would soon shift the tide. What secret influence did this enigmatic man possess? How could Anna's personal battle spark a wave of transformation within the hospital? Let's delve into the story and find out. But before we begin, share in the comments where you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy tales filled with unexpected turns and a touch of justice, don't forget to subscribe. The polished corridors of St. Mary's General Hospital shimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights as Anna Parker stepped inside for the first time. The air was heavy with the sharp tang of disinfectant, underscored by an unspoken tension that sent a chill through her. Swallowing her nerves, Anna straightened her shoulders and held her head high, determined to make a positive impression. As she approached the nurses' station, an abrupt silence fell over the bustling area. Conversations fizzled into murmurs, and glances were quickly averted, as though meeting her gaze was an unspoken taboo. A wave of familiar loneliness welled up in Anna, but she forced it down, steeling herself against the discomfort. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm and composed despite the weight of her emotions. "I'm Anna Parker, the new nurse. Could you point me to the head nurse's office?" A blonde nurse glanced up, her blue eyes widening slightly before she composed herself with a practiced, professional smile. "Of course," she said, her tone courteous but distant. "Down the hall, third door on the right." Anna offered a polite nod of thanks and made her way down the corridor, hyper-aware of the gazes tracking her every step. The rhythmic click of her practical shoes against the polished floor seemed unnaturally loud in the hushed atmosphere, each step amplifying her sense of unease. As she approached the office door, a tall, distinguished man in a crisp white coat exited a nearby room. His salt-and-pepper hair and commanding presence made it clear he was a senior physician. Anna's heart lifted slightly. Perhaps this was an opportunity to establish a positive rapport. "Good morning, Doctor," Anna greeted warmly, flashing a friendly smile. "I'm Anna Parker, the new nurse starting today. It's a pleasure to meet you." The doctor's steely grey eyes scanned her from head to toe, his face unreadable. "Dr. Leclerc," he said shortly, "I trust you've been thoroughly briefed on our protocols." Anna barely opened her mouth to respond before Dr. Leclerc continued, his tone clipped and firm. "We hold ourselves to exceptionally high standards at St. Mary's. I trust you're prepared to meet them." Without waiting for a reply, he strode past her, leaving Anna standing alone in the hallway. Her hopeful smile faltered as her outstretched hand fell slowly to her side, a knot of disappointment forming in her chest. The exchange with Dr. Leclerc left Anna feeling deflated, but she refused to let it weigh her down. Drawing a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and knocked firmly on the head nurse's door. As she waited for a reply, her thoughts drifted back to her days in nursing school. Her mother's voice, warm yet tinged with both pride and concern, echoed in her mind. "Baby girl," her mother had said, "you're going to have to fight twice as hard as anyone else, but don't ever let them see you sweat. You come from a long line of strong women, and that same strength is in you." Anna remembered the late nights spent poring over textbooks, the extra hours she dedicated in the lab, and the ever-present pressure to prove herself. She recalled the subtle dismissals from certain professors, the raised eyebrows when she aced exams, and the hushed murmurs of classmates doubting her place among them. Yet, through all the challenges, Anna had persisted. She graduated at the top of her class, her unwavering determination silencing even her harshest critics. Now, as she stood in the quiet, sterile hallway of St. Mary's, those memories fortified her resolve. She had faced adversity before, and she would do it again. The door opened abruptly, revealing a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and sharp eyes. "Miss Parker, I presume," the woman said, her tone brisk. "Come in. We have a lot to go over, and I expect you to keep up." Anna stepped inside, trailing the head nurse into the office. Yet even as she prepared to immerse herself in the demands of her new role, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a job. The atmosphere within the hospital carried an unspoken tension, like a storm simmering beneath the surface of polite smiles and clinical precision. What Anna didn't yet realize was that her presence would soon become a turning point for St. Mary's. She was about to confront the deep-seated prejudices embedded within its polished walls, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge the hospital's culture and expose the toxic truths lurking behind its esteemed reputation. Anna's first day at the hospital was a blur of orientations, introductions, and heaps of paperwork. Navigating the corridors, she noticed the subtle signs of exclusion. As she walked closer, conversations around her would quiet down and then continue in whispers once she'd passed. Her efforts to chat with other nurses were met with polite yet distant replies, making her feel like an outsider in a place that was meant to be collaborative. By the end of her shift, Anna was both mentally and physically drained. While collecting her belongings from her locker, she caught snippets of a conversation from two nurses around the corner. "Have you noticed the new girl?" one murmured. "Yes, I'm not sure what they were thinking hiring her," the other nurse whispered back. "This isn't really the kind of place for, you know." Anna's hand paused on her locker, her spirits plummeting. She had brushed off the initial coolness as just first-day nerves, but now the harsh reality was setting in. This wasn't merely a new job, it was a daily struggle against ingrained biases. As she exited the hospital, the day's burden weighed heavily upon her. Heading to the bus stop, her mind churned with a mix of emotions. The morning's enthusiasm had given way to a deep-seated feeling of doubt and alienation. Settling onto the stiff plastic bench, Anna pulled out her phone and called a familiar number. After a couple of rings, a warm, reassuring voice greeted her. "Hey, baby girl, how was your first day?" Hearing her mother's voice, Anna felt tears start to form. She inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to cry in public. "It was tough, Mama," she whispered. There was a brief silence before her mother responded, her tone embodying both understanding and resolve. "Anna Marie Parker, listen to me. You've worked too hard to let anyone make you feel inferior. Remember who you are and where you're from. You're there not just for yourself. You represent every little black girl who dreams of walking those halls." Anna shut her eyes, absorbing her mother's empowering words. "I know, Mama. I just didn't think it would be this hard." "Nothing worthwhile is ever easy, baby," her mother said firmly, "but you carry the strength of generations with you. Keep your head up, excel at your job more than anyone else, and never let them see you waver. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mama," Anna responded, her voice imbued with a renewed sense of purpose. "I hear you." After hanging up, Anna noticed a sleek black Mercedes decelerate as it neared the bus stop. Through its tinted windows, she briefly locked eyes with Dr. Leclerc before the car accelerated away. Anna straightened her back, her mother's encouraging words resonating within her. She was up against a tough challenge, but she was not without support. With her family's backing and her own unwavering resolve, Anna felt prepared to tackle any obstacles St. Mary's might present. As the bus rolled up, Anna stood poised for the next day and unaware that her presence at St. Mary's was about to catalyze significant changes. Her mere existence in the hospital would gradually expose deep-seated biases and demand a long-overdue cultural reckoning. Over the subsequent weeks at St. Mary's General Hospital, the atmosphere became a slow-burning fuse of increasing tension. The initial aloofness Anna had felt had morphed into a more subtle yet pervasive exclusion. On her morning rounds, the contrast in treatment between her and her white peers was glaring. Dr. William Leclerc, in particular, seemed almost to relish criticizing her work, despite her meticulous efforts. "Nurse Parker," Dr. Leclerc announced one morning, his voice echoing through the bustling nurses' station, "I trust you have acquainted yourself with our protocols. We cannot afford any errors." The way he lingered on the word errors sent a shiver through Anna. She met his gaze with a steady, unflinching look. "Absolutely, Dr. Leclerc. I am thoroughly familiar with all hospital protocols," she responded confidently. Dr. Leclerc raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "We shall see, won't we? Let's just hope you've grasped all you need to here." His tone dripped with barely hidden disdain, a fact not missed by Anna or the other nurses who feigned busyness while keenly listening in. As Dr. Leclerc turned and walked away, Anna felt the heavy burden of unvoiced judgments bearing down on her. As the day progressed, Anna noticed she was consistently assigned the most demanding and least desirable duties, while her white counterparts handled more straightforward cases. Time and again, she was directed to manage the most challenging patients and intricate procedures. "Anna, would you mind attending to Mr. Ferrari in room 305? Asked another nurse, her tone overly sweet. "He's been quite difficult today." Anna acknowledged the description with a subtle nod, fully aware that labeling Mr. Ferrari as challenging barely scratched the surface. He was notorious for his racially charged outbursts, having already reduced 2 nurses to tears within the week. Despite this, Anna tackled her assignment with unyielding professionalism, determined to demonstrate her competence. Upon entering Mr. Ferrari's room, she steeled herself for the expected barrage of abuse. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Ferrari barked the moment he saw her. "I told them I don't want no colored nurse touching me." Anna inhaled deeply, fortifying herself against his vitriolic words. "Mr. Ferrari, I am here to check your vitals and change your dressing. I assure you, I am fully qualified to take care of you." Despite facing a relentless flood of racial insults, Anna performed her duties meticulously, her professionalism unwavering in the face of his bigotry. Upon leaving the room, Anna was met by Dr. Leclerc, who stood in the hallway with a pretense of concern. "Everything all right in there, Nurse Parker? We heard quite a commotion." Anna held his gaze steadily. "Mr. Ferrari is stable, and I've changed his dressing. Do you need anything else from me, Dr. Leclerc?" A flicker of surprise passed over the doctor's face, soon hidden behind his usual patronizing demeanor. "I hope you keep up that calm in dealing with all the compliment." "Thank you, Mr. Miller. It's been just over a year now," she responded, her initial surprise shifting into pride. "That's impressive," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "It's a tough place to excel." Anna offered a smile, buoyed by his empathy. "There are challenges," she noted, watching his reaction. "Yet I find joy in aiding others no matter what." "It's a noble attitude," he remarked earnestly. "Nursing might go unnoticed, but the difference you make is profound." With each task, Anna felt a real respect coming from Mr. Müller. His demeanor was a distinct and welcome change from that of many others she encountered. "You don't need to worry about me," he said, observing her diligent care. "I've faced more difficult situations than this." Anna felt a resonance with his words. Here was someone who not only recognized her struggles, but also exuded a resilience that inspired her. It was a brief moment of connection that sparked a glimmer of hope in her hectic day. "I assure you, you're in good hands," Anna affirmed, returning her focus to her duties. As she moved to gather additional supplies, a refreshed sense of purpose washed over her. This encounter might just be the shift she had been hoping for, a serendipitous ally found in the most unexpected of places. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Muller would not only be a patient she tended to, but also a catalyst for her personal growth within the challenging environment of St. Mary's. "I've been here for a few weeks now, sir," she answered with caution, feeling the weight of his gaze. "It has certainly been an experience." Mr. Muller raised an eyebrow at her measured words. "I see," he responded, a trace of amusement in his tone. "So, how does the hospital measure up to its renowned reputation?" Anna started to reply, but paused, unsure. Her hesitation was interrupted by Dr. Leclerc, who entered the room with an unexpectedly jovial air that Anna had not seen from him before. "Mr. Muller," Dr. Leclerc declared, his tone overly sweet, "I trust Nurse Parker has been attending to you well. We ensure that only our finest staff are assigned to our esteemed patients." Anna kept her face calm, aware that Dr. Leclerc had never truly recognized her skills before. Mr. Muller seemed to notice the disparity. "Absolutely, Dr. Leclerc," he responded, glancing from the doctor to Anna. "Nurse Parker has been outstanding. We were just discussing her time here at St. Mary's." Dr. Leclerc's smile wavered momentarily before he regained his composure. "I'm sure she can attest to the exceptional experience. We pride ourselves on the inclusive and supportive culture we foster here at St. Mary's." Anna bit back her frustration at Dr. Leclerc's evident duplicity, but she remained composed. Mr. Muller, on the other hand, appeared attuned to the underlying strain. "Is that so?" he pondered, his gaze fixed on Anna. "I'm eager to see this supportive atmosphere for myself during my stay." As Dr. Leclerc elaborated on Mr. Muller's treatment protocol, Anna sensed a crucial shift had occurred. The keenness in Mr. Muller's gaze, the deliberate nature of his inquiries. It seemed he was peering past the veneer of St. Mary's refined exterior. In the days following, Anna increasingly found herself in Mr. Muller's room more than with any other patient. Despite his ailments, he remained sharp and engaging, frequently questioning her about her professional experiences and personal background. Unlike most others at the hospital, Mr. Muller showed a genuine interest in her answers, devoid of the biases she often encountered. One day, while changing Mr. Muller's bandages, Anna caught a chilling snippet of conversation just outside the door. "I don't care what Dr. Leclerc says," a nurse whispered sharply. "I don't trust that Parker woman with our VIP patient. Who knows what she might do?" "Yeah," another voice concurred, "but we can't speak up. They'll just call us racist." Anna's hands quivered as she completed her task, feeling crushed under the relentless scrutiny and distrust. Noticing her agitation, Mr. Muller watched her closely. "Is everything all right, Nurse Parker?" he inquired, his tone both soft and insightful. Anna managed a smile. "Absolutely, Mr. Muller. I'm just focused on perfecting these bandages." He observed her quietly for a moment, then spoke thoughtfully. "You know," he began, "I've always thought that one's true character is shown not by how they treat those above them, but by how they treat those they consider below them." Taken aback by his pointed remark, Anna met his gaze. Mr. Muller looked at her with an understanding expression. "I've seen quite a bit over the years, Nurse Parker, and the view from this hospital bed has been quite revealing." Before Anna could reply, Dr. Leclerc walked into the room, abruptly ending their conversation. As she stepped out, Anna was struck by the realization that Mr. Muller was no ordinary patient. His observations and remarks hinted at a deep awareness of the underlying tensions at St. Mary's. For the first time since her arrival, she harbored a sense of hope. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Muller's influence would soon trigger a series of events that would challenge the entrenched biases hidden beneath the hospital's polished exterior. As time passed, Anna felt increasingly alienated at St. Mary's. The initial aloofness from her colleagues had escalated to outright hostility, manifesting in whispers and disdainful looks that shadowed her movements. Dr. Leclerc, sensing impunity for his actions, grew more brazen in his efforts to sabotage her. One morning, while Anna was sorting through patient charts at the nurses' station, Dr. Leclerc approached, files in hand. "Nurse Parker," he began, oozing feigned concern. "These cases need your attention today. They are quite complex. I'm sure you can manage, can't you?" Anna surveyed the stack, immediately noticing it was nearly double the workload assigned to her peers. She looked up at Dr. Leclerc, her expression resolute. "Absolutely, Dr. Leclerc. I'll start on them immediately." As Dr. Leclerc turned away, a smirk briefly crossed his face, and Anna caught a low mutter. "Let's see how she manages this." That day, Anna moved tirelessly from one challenging case to the next, the hours stretching long and demanding. The patients she cared for were some of the most difficult in the hospital, presenting complex medical issues and often abrasive demeanors. Despite the relentless pace, Anna maintained her professionalism and care, treating each patient with unwavering dedication. Yet, the relentless demand began to wear on her, both physically and mentally, as she pushed through the day's trials. As Anna attended to another urgent call, she couldn't help overhearing two colleagues in hushed conversation. "Can you believe they're letting her manage all these critical cases?" one nurse said with a sneer. "It's like they're setting her up to fail." "I know," the other responded, "but it's kind of amazing how she just keeps going. I'd have broken down by now." The mix of anger and hurt that surged through Anna was palpable. It was clear her colleagues were not only aware of the unfair workload, but were also spectating, almost hoping for her to stumble. Throughout the taxing day, Anna increasingly sought refuge in Mr. Muller's room, which had become a haven for her, a place where she felt valued and seen. Entering Mr. Muller's room for a routine visit, she was met with a look of genuine concern. "Nurse Parker," he said as she walked in, "you look worn out. Everything okay?" Anna offered a tired smile. "Just another hectic day, Mr. Muller. Nothing I can't manage." Observing her closely, Mr. Muller spoke thoughtfully. "You know, there's a difference between just managing and actually thriving. From what I've observed, you're certainly capable of the latter." His words, thoughtful and encouraging, offered Anna a moment of comfort in the storm of her daily challenges. His words, though kind, underscored the stark contrast between Mr. Muller's treatment of her and the overall hospital staff's attitude. Anna felt a lump in her throat as the sense of isolation began to weigh on her. "Thank you, Mr. Muller," she whispered back, gratitude mingling with sorrow. "Your kindness means a lot." As she moved to leave, Mr. Muller called out, his tone commanding yet gentle, "Nurse Parker, remember, sometimes the greatest strength lies in knowing when to speak up." Anna walked out of the room, her mind spinning with the weight of his advice. She returned to the nurses' station, a growing sense of foreboding that things were about to shift. Unbeknownst to her, events were aligning that would test her resilience and prompt a crucial confrontation that had been simmering since her arrival at St. Mary's. The next day, as Anna entered the hospital, she was met with an atmosphere of intense activity. Rumors buzzed about an urgent high-profile surgery slated for that day, with hospital board members and prominent visitors expected. The air was charged with apprehension as she started her rounds, feeling the collective anxiety of the staff. The atmosphere among the medical staff was tense. The impending surgery cast a heavy shadow over everyone involved. While carrying out her morning tasks, Dr. Leclerc approached Anna, his eyes hinting at something that instantly raised her defenses. "Nurse Parker," he began, his tone deliberately even. "This afternoon's emergency surgery needs your assistance. It's a pivotal case. I trust you're up to the task." A wave of surprise and skepticism hit Anna. To be selected for such a critical operation was typically seen as a privilege, yet Dr. Leclerc's involvement made her question his intentions. "Certainly, Dr. Leclerc," she responded, maintaining a composed expression. "I'll be prepared." As Dr. Leclerc moved away, Anna caught him whispering to a colleague, "Let's observe how she deals with the stress. This will be intriguing." The time leading up to the surgery passed in a flurry of fervent preparations. Anna immersed herself in her duties, meticulously checking and rechecking her work to ensure she was ready for any challenges that might arise during the procedure. As she donned her surgical scrubs, she noticed doubtful glances from some team members. She inhaled deeply, bracing herself. Her mother's words rang in her ears. "Don't you dare let them see you falter." The surgery commenced, and Anna found herself amid Dr. Leclerc and several esteemed colleagues. The room crackled with tension, heightened by the watchful eyes of prominent onlookers scrutinizing their every action, adding another layer of strain. Despite these daunting conditions, Anna's focus never wavered. Her actions were deliberate and calculated. She seamlessly anticipated the surgeon's needs, providing them with instruments instinctively, her extensive training and expertise evident. As the procedure unfolded, Anna's keen observation led her to a startling realization. Dr. Leclerc, typically composed and decisive, appeared uncertain. A slight tremor in his hands as he positioned for a vital cut caught her attention. In that critical moment, Anna perceived that Dr. Leclerc was on the verge of a grave error. Without a second thought, she intervened. "Dr. Leclerc," she called out, her voice firm and composed, "perhaps we should consider a different angle. The patient's anatomy suggests it might be safer." Silence enveloped the room, all eyes pivoting towards Anna. Dr. Leclerc's face registered both shock and irritation. For an instant, Anna feared he would reject her advice. However, after a tense pause, Dr. Leclerc gave a subtle nod. He realigned his technique in line with Anna's recommendation. The surgery proceeded, and it soon became apparent that Anna's timely input had likely been life-saving. As the operation wrapped up successfully, Anna felt the intense gaze of many in the room. Some regarded her with newfound admiration, while others, including Dr. Leclerc, looked on with resentment barely masked. After the surgical tools were put away, Dr. Leclerc approached her, his tone dark and threatening. "Nurse Parker, I need to see you in private. Immediately." Her heart racing, Anna trailed Dr. Leclerc out of the operating room, aware that her career might be at stake for her outspokenness. She was taken aback to find they entered Mr. Muller's room, momentarily distracted by her focus during the surgery, to remember he was still under their care. Dr. Leclerc, consumed by his anger, paid no heed to the setting. The door barely shut before he confronted her, his face flushed with rage. "How dare you undermine my authority in there?" he snarled, his voice seething with contempt. "Do you realize who I am? You're fortunate I don't dismiss you immediately for such defiance." Anna maintained her composure, responding with a steady voice. "Dr. Leclerc, I was merely fulfilling my responsibilities." "Your job," Dr. Leclerc snapped back, his voice escalating. "Your role is to obey, not to second-guess your superiors. This is why people like you don't belong at an esteemed place like St. Mary's. You're here as a token of diversity, not because you possess genuine talent or knowledge." As Dr. Leclerc ranted, his words becoming increasingly racist and aggressive, a wave of anger and sadness overwhelmed Anna. The discrimination she had faced, the subtle and overt biases, now culminated in this raw, ugly confrontation. But before she could formulate a reply, an unexpected voice intervened. "Dr. Leclerc!" Mr. Miller's voice rang out, imbued with a stern authority that stopped Dr. Leclerc in his tracks. Both Anna and Dr. Leclerc turned in surprise to see Mr. Miller sitting up, his expression one of stern disapproval. "Mr. Miller!" Dr. Leclerc faltered, his complexion draining as he realized the impact of his outburst. I didn't know you were awake. I'm sorry for this intrusion." "Oh, I'm very much awake, Dr. Leclerc," Mr. Miller countered sharply, his gaze stern, "and I've been conscious long enough to witness the utterly disrespectful manner in which you, and indeed others here, have treated Nurse Parker." Anna was stunned, rooted to the spot by the unfolding scene. Mr. Muller, typically quiet and unassuming, now exuded an unmistakable authority that seemed to command the entire room. "Mr. Muller," Dr. Leclerc stammered, his voice shaky, "I assure you, this is all a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Mr. Muller interrupted forcefully. "What I've seen during my time here speaks volumes about a systemic issue of discrimination and harassment. It stops today." With every word from Mr. Muller, it became increasingly apparent to both Anna and Dr. Leclerc that he was not merely a significant figure within the hospital. He was someone with substantial influence. "Who are you exactly?" Dr. Leclerc asked, his earlier confidence dissipated completely. Mr. Muller offered a smile, though it carried no warmth. "I happen to have the ability to significantly influence the future of this hospital. And currently, Dr. Leclerc, I'm not inclined to favor an institution that condones such overt racism and unprofessional conduct." A flood of emotions surged through Anna as the magnitude of the situation dawned on her. Relief that someone had finally acknowledged the mistreatment she had suffered, indignation at the injustices endured, and a budding hope that this might herald real change. Unbeknownst to them all, this confrontation was about to trigger a cascade of events that would profoundly shake the foundations of St. Mary's General Hospital, unveiling deeply ingrained biases and demanding a long-overdue reckoning. The atmosphere in Mr. Miller's room thickened with tension as his declaration took full effect. Dr. Leclerc, now pale and unsteady, attempted to compose himself. Anna remained silent, her thoughts spinning from the rapid developments. Mr. Miller, sitting upright with a commanding presence, continued to fix Dr. Leclerc with a firm look. "Perhaps it's time we discuss the prevailing culture within this hospital. Don't you agree?" As Dr. Leclerc opened his mouth to reply, a knock interrupted the intense scene. A nurse, looking anxious, peeked into the room. "Dr. Leclerc, the hospital administrator needs to see you immediately. It's urgent." Dr. Leclerc shifted his gaze between Mr. Muller and the nurse, clearly conflicted. At last, he gave a tight nod. "We'll resume our talk later, Mr. Muller. Nurse Parker, you can leave for now." Rushing out, Dr. Leclerc left Anna in the room with Mr. Muller. A thick silence fell, laden with words they both held back. "Miss Parker," Mr. Muller began, his tone softer now, "I believe it's time for a proper introduction. My name is Thomas Muller, and I am the CEO of Healthcare United, one of the leading healthcare conglomerates in the nation." Anna's eyes widened in disbelief. Healthcare United was a giant in the industry, renowned for its vast influence and resources. Suddenly, the significance of Mr. Muller's previous remarks about his ability to influence the hospital's fate clicked. "Mr. Muller, Anna stuttered, at a loss for words. "Please, have a seat," Mr. Muller invited, motioning to a chair next to his bed. "We need to talk." In the following hour, Mr. Muller shared that his admission to St. Mary's was unexpected, a result of a skiing mishap, yet it had exposed him to serious systemic flaws within the facility. I arrived here as a patient, expecting nothing less than exemplary medical attention, Mr. Muller recounted. What I encountered instead was a prevailing culture of bias and unprofessional behavior that contradicts everything I uphold in healthcare leadership. He detailed his observations of the subtle and overt discrimination Anna endured, the microaggressions she faced, and the pervasive toxic atmosphere that seemed to engulf the hospital. Your experience, Nurse Parker, is sadly not... Mr. Muller paused, choosing his words carefully. Unique, he continued, his voice tinged with both anger and resolve. But it is utterly unacceptable, and it stops today. As they conversed, Anna felt a burden lifting from her. For the first time since joining St. Mary's, she sensed that someone truly recognized and valued her presence. Mr. Muller paid close attention as she detailed her challenges, his expression growing increasingly grave with each account. "Thank you for being so open, Nurse Parker," Mr. Muller remarked after she concluded. "Your ability to endure in such a tough environment is admirable, yet it's time for a shift towards systemic improvement, not merely individual survival." At that moment, a knock at the door interrupted them. The hospital administrator entered, her expression anxious. "Mr. Muller," she began, her voice wavering, "I've been informed there are some concerns regarding our hospital's operations. Please be assured we consider these issues with utmost seriousness." Mr. Muller raised an eyebrow in skepticism. "Do you now? Because from what I've seen, the primary concern here seems to be preserving an outdated and prejudiced norm." The administrator turned noticeably paler, evidently caught off guard by his straightforward critique. I'm not sure I follow. We have several diversity programs in place." "Initiatives alone are insufficient," Mr. Muller interjected sharply. "What this hospital needs is a fundamental transformation of its culture, beginning at the very top." In the hours that followed, Mr. Muller outlined his expectations for reform. He insisted on a comprehensive audit of discriminatory behaviors at St. Mary's, compulsory diversity and inclusion training for all personnel, and a complete overhaul of the hospital's recruitment and promotion criteria. "As for Dr. Leclerc," Mr. Muller stated, his tone firm, "I demand a thorough review of his conduct. His actions today were not merely unprofessional, they were discriminatory and pose a risk to patient safety." The administrator, recognizing the severity of the issues raised, nodded in a dazed agreement. "Absolutely, Mr. Muller. We will start to put these changes into effect right away." As the day progressed, news of Mr. Muller's true role and his demands for change buzzed through St. Mary's Hospital. The corridors were charged with a blend of anxiety, expectation, and for some, a flicker of hope. Anna, still absorbing the day's events, suddenly found herself the focus of many. Colleagues who had once overlooked or undermined her now sought her out, some with clumsy apologies, others curious about the anticipated reforms. At the end of her shift, Anna returned to Mr. Muller's room for one final visit. She found him sitting up in bed, looking weary yet content. "Nurse Parker," he welcomed her with a friendly smile. "I hope you don't mind, but I've suggested your name for the new Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Your experiences and perspective will be crucial as we aim to reshape St. Mary's." A wave of emotions washed over Anna. Gratitude, optimism, and a revitalized sense of mission. "Thank you, Mr. Muller," she responded, her voice heavy with emotion, "for everything." Mr. Muller simply shook his head. "No, thank you, Nurse Parker. Your bravery and dedication during tough times have truly been motivating. You've reminded me why I chose to work in healthcare, to impact people's lives meaningfully." As Anna walked out of the hospital that evening, she sensed the start of a new era, not just for her, but for St. Mary's at large. The path forward would be challenging, yet for the first time since her employment began, Anna harbored real optimism for what lay ahead. Unbeknownst to her, the events of that day were setting the stage for impactful changes not only at St. Mary's, but across the entire healthcare sector. The unfolding tale of a committed nurse and a pivotal patient was poised to drive transformation on a scale beyond their wildest expectations. The subsequent days at St. Mary's General Hospital were filled with intense activity and emotion. The disclosure of Mr. Muller's real identity and his call for reform had sent shockwaves throughout the institution. The once impeccable image of the hospital was now marred, revealing long-ignored problems lurking beneath. On an early Monday morning, Anna entered the hospital to find it buzzing with activity. News vans lined up outside, with reporters eager for any comments. Inside, the mood was fraught with tension as staff members gathered in small, whispering clusters. Navigating her way to the nurses' station, Anna saw Dr. Leclerc being led to the administrative offices by security. Their eyes briefly met, his filled with a combination of anger and fear before he was taken away. "Anna!" A voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Sarah, a nurse who had previously been distant, coming forward with a hesitant smile. "I just wanted to apologize for my behavior towards you. I didn't realize..." Anna nodded in acceptance of the apology, still searching for the right words. Before she could reply, the hospital's PA system broke the silence. "All staff members, please proceed to the main auditorium for an emergency meeting in 30 minutes. Your attendance is compulsory." When Anna entered the auditorium, it was already bustling with people. She chose a seat at the back, feeling the weight of curious stares and hushed conversations around her. At the front, Mr. Muller, clad in a crisp suit despite his arm casts, was engaged in a low conversation with the hospital administrator and a group of official-looking figures. As the chatter subsided, Mr. Muller approached the podium. His arrival brought a palpable shift in the atmosphere, silencing the murmurs as all eyes fixed on him. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying a clear, commanding tone. "For those who don't know me, I am Thomas Muller, CEO of Healthcare United. Over the past week, I have been a patient here at St. Mary's, recuperating from a skiing accident. During this time, I've had the chance to witness firsthand the daily operations and the prevailing culture of this hospital." He paused, surveying the audience with a critical eye. "What I observed was profoundly disturbing. I encountered a culture rife with discrimination, bias, and unprofessional conduct that is unacceptable in modern healthcare." As he spoke these words, a wave of murmurs swept through the crowd, causing some to shift uneasily while others nodded in recognition of his observations. "Let me be clear," Mr. Muller emphasized. "The behaviors I witnessed, particularly how Nurse Anna Parker was treated, aren't isolated. They indicate a deep-rooted issue within our system that we've neglected too long." At his words, Anna felt the collective gaze of the room shift towards her. She straightened her posture, facing her colleagues with a composed grace. Mr. Muller proceeded to detail the immediate reforms. These included a comprehensive investigation into discriminatory actions, compulsory diversity, and inclusion training for all staff, and a complete revision of hiring and promotion protocols. "Furthermore," Mr. Muller continued, his tone intensifying, "anyone found guilty of discriminatory practices will face severe repercussions. This includes Dr. William Leclerc, who is currently suspended pending a full review of his behavior." His announcement stirred a flurry of murmurs across the room. Anna noticed the mixed reactions among Dr. Leclerc's colleagues. Some displayed shock and dismay, while others appeared somewhat relieved. "I understand these adjustments might be challenging for some," Mr. Muller acknowledged. "Change is often difficult. However, this is not merely about ethical correctness. It's crucial for providing top-notch patient care. A diverse, inclusive, and respectful work environment leads to superior health outcomes for all. As Mr. Muller wrapped up his speech, he made a surprising final announcement that electrified the audience. Lastly, I'm pleased to introduce the individual who will spearhead many of these changes. Nurse Anna Parker has agreed to serve as Chief Diversity Officer at St. Mary's. Her experiences and insights will be crucial as we strive to reshape our institution. A wave of shock, pride, and nervousness swept over Anna as the room erupted in applause. This role was beyond what she had anticipated. She had only previously discussed participating in the Diversity and Inclusion Committee with Mr. Muller. As she walked to the front of the room at his signal, she noticed a spectrum of emotions among her colleagues: surprise, admiration, and in some corners, a hint of resentment. Standing at the podium, Anna took a moment to gather herself before addressing the crowd. "Thank you, Mr. Muller. To everyone here, I want to make it clear, I am here not as an adversary, but as a fellow staff member who sees the great potential of St. Mary's and all its people. The journey ahead will be challenging, but I am dedicated to collaborating with each of you to foster an environment where every staff member feels respected and every patient receives the highest quality care, no matter their background." As Anna addressed the crowd, her words seemed to resonate. Nods of approval and thoughtful expressions appeared across the room. Even those who had previously been hostile now listened with apparent attention. Following the meeting, Anna was greeted by a throng of colleagues, some extending congratulations, others offering apologies, and a few reaching out with tentative gestures of reconciliation. The mood within the hospital had noticeably changed. Though undercurrents of tension and uncertainty persisted, they were now mingled with a genuine sense of hope and potential. Throughout the day, Anna collaborated closely with Mr. Muller and the hospital's leadership to kickstart the changes they had announced. It was a tiring yet invigorating endeavor, marking the first time Anna truly felt her efforts were affecting meaningful change at St. Mary's. As the day drew to a close, Anna gathered her belongings to leave. Near the hospital's exit, she found Mr. Muller waiting for her. His presence suggested the discussion of next steps, or perhaps a moment of reflection on the day's events. "Nurse Parker," he greeted her with a warm smile. "Or should I now call you Chief Diversity Officer Parker? How are you holding up?" With a weary chuckle, Anna responded, "It's been quite a day, Mr. Muller. I'm still trying to process it all." Mr. Muller nodded empathetically. "It's a lot to absorb, but I want you to know that I have complete faith in your ability to guide these initiatives. Your resilience and integrity, especially under tough circumstances, are precisely what St. Mary's needs at this juncture." As they walked out of the hospital together, Mr. Muller adopted a more serious tone. "You should be aware that what we're starting at St. Mary's is just the tip of the iceberg. I intend to roll out similar reforms across all Healthcare United facilities. Your journey, Anna, could well ignite a transformative movement in how diversity and inclusion are embraced across the healthcare sector." Feeling the magnitude of the task ahead, Anna felt more determined than daunted. "I'm up for the challenge, Mr. Muller. Together, we can enact meaningful, enduring change." As Anna walked away, she pondered the rapid shifts that had unfolded over the past few days. Once cloaked in loneliness and close to surrender, she now led a movement poised to revolutionize not only St. Mary's, but the broader healthcare landscape. Ahead lay a path fraught with hurdles and opposition from those averse to change. Yet, turning her gaze back towards the hospital, a wave of resolve washed over her. This role had evolved beyond mere employment. It had become her mission. It was an opportunity to prevent any other medical professional from suffering as she had. With this renewed mission, Anna ventured into the evening, prepared to tackle any challenges the next day might present. The transformation at St. Mary's was underway, marking a new phase in the crusade for fairness and inclusivity in healthcare. In the ensuing months, spurred by Mr. Muller's eye-opening insights, St. Mary's General Hospital witnessed profound changes under Anna's guidance. As the newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer, with steadfast backing from Mr. Muller, the hospital's once hostile environment gradually embraced inclusivity and respect. Initially met with skepticism, the compulsory diversity and inclusion workshops slowly enlightened and transformed attitudes. Dr. Leclerc, after a detailed inquiry, was relieved of his duties, reinforcing the uncompromising stance against discrimination. As St. Mary's transformations began to draw widespread attention, Anna increasingly found herself invited to speak at medical conferences and diversity seminars. Exactly 1 year after Mr. Muller's pivotal intervention, she addressed a full auditorium at a national healthcare conference. "A year ago," Anna opened, "I was a nurse on the brink of resignation. Today, I stand before you as tangible evidence that change is attainable, that a single voice can indeed make a difference." She recounted the story of St. Mary's metamorphosis, candidly discussing the obstacles they encountered while also celebrating the successes, the individuals impacted, the attitudes altered, and the cultural shift. Post-conference, a fully healed Mr. Muller approached Anna with a warm smile. "Anna," he began, "you've traveled a great distance from the nurse I encountered a year ago." They conversed about the ongoing advancements at St. Mary's and their broader influence on the healthcare sector. Mr. Muller revealed that various other hospitals within the Healthcare United network had started to adopt similar initiatives. "You know, Anna," he remarked, "when I was admitted to St. Mary's following my skiing accident, I could never have predicted the transformative journey it would initiate. You've not only revamped St. Mary's, but also rekindled my enthusiasm for our work." As Anna made her way back to St. Mary's, she mulled over her remarkable transformation from a disillusioned, solitary nurse to a pioneering leader and catalyst for change. Although much work remained, she was fueled by a newfound sense of hope and resolve stronger than ever. Upon her return, she was warmly welcomed by Sarah, who had shifted from a distant colleague to a staunch supporter. The hospital was alive with a fresh vibrancy, with staff engaging and cooperating in ways previously unseen. In the main lobby, Anna stopped to admire a newly installed mural showcasing a varied group of healthcare professionals working in unity. Below it, a plaque declared, "Diversity is our strength, inclusion is our commitment, compassion is our calling." Settling into her office to face the forthcoming challenges, Anna smiled. The transformation at St. Mary's was merely the outset. The enduring task of altering hearts, minds, and systems was well underway. Anna was geared up for everything, dedicated to advocating for a truly inclusive healthcare environment day by day. What aspect of Anna's journey struck you most? Was it her resilience against prejudice, or maybe the unexpected helping hand from Mr. Muller? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support motivates me to continue sharing these touching narratives. Thank you for joining me on this journey.